All right, everyone. I've just realised I look like the milk tray man. I'm loving it. Happy Friday. Absolutely throwing it down with rain. Manchester is my heaven. Let's look at the state of play with the takeover. Who's in it and what potential will happen. What I'm going to do is go through five options as I see it. Just name them first and then unpick them in a bit more detail, looking at the merits of it and how likely it is to happen. So first of all, let's just list what the options are, in my opinion. Option one, the Glazers stay with no investment or anything, they just stay. Option two, Sir Jim Ratcliffe comes in with, I imagine, the Glazers staying there in some capacity and possibly even having some voting rights. Option three, Sheikh Jassim, full takeover of the club. Option four, minority investment. Option five, something a bit left field that we don't know about yet. Dubai, a private investment group from Saudi Arabia, whatever, something different. There's no order of preference there, by the way. Let's go through it in a bit more detail then. So number one, the Glazers stay with no investment, no nothing, just as they are now. It's Armageddon. We've had a sneak peek into what that's going to look like this summer just gone, and particularly in January. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer confirmed what I think we probably already kind of knew, is that the owners were putting a limit on the amount of signings they could make. The owners were vetting younger players that they had no knowledge of and saying no to them, who are now, we all know, in some cases 70, 80, 90 million pound players. It's just going to be it's going to be much worse, actually. So I was going to say it's going to be much more of the same. It's not. It's going to be worse. The club hasn't got any money left. The Glazers have never had any money, but the club itself has got no money left now because they have stripped it to its bare bones. They can't afford Amrabat for 20 million quid. So there's a potential, actually, that the club would go bust if the Glazers stay, because there's no money to fix a stadium. There's no money to do just basic stuff like get players in. It's we cease to exist as a serious football club if they stay. I think we'll plummet in the league. I can't see us getting in Europe year in, year out. It's Armageddon, as I said. Gives me the heebie-jeebies thinking about that, to be honest with you. I don't think it is an option, which we'll come back to at the end. Number two, did I say number two was Sir Jim Ratcliffe, probably with the Glazers staying. Let's look at the merits of it first. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's got no track record of successfully running a football club. He would keep the Glazers there, I'm pretty sure of that. It's going to be much more of the same. It's almost like probably what United were like in 2016 before they'd bled it dry. We had a bit of money in 2016. We ain't got any now, but it was still the Glazers running the club, and it was still an absolute shit show. We're not going to be competitive. We're not going to be challenging for titles and Champions Leagues and all that we hope fans want to try to compete for. So the likelihood of it happening, not sure. I think the 31% of shareholders would have something to say about that. And it doesn't seem that feasible. The Glazers wouldn't be able to take huge levels of dividends and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that that's a no-goer as well. Number three is my preferred choice, Sheikh Jassim and the 9-2 Foundation. It would be a full takeover, complete reset, money to spend on the stadium, money to spend on the infrastructure of the club, a winning mentality, hopefully, that that will be symbolised by a complete sweep, clearing of the decks in terms of players, people in positions at the club that have been there and been mediocre for years and just been allowed to stay. I think they'll go, because they ain't going to spend this amount of money on the club and just let it continue as it has been. No chance. I think it's also, actually, not that I care about the Glazers, it's the best option for the Glazers, because it's a lottery win. It's a lottery win that they don't deserve. It sorts out a lot of the problems. It wipes the United debt, but also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who they also own, are in financial trouble. They owe money regarding them. I think it builds relations between them and Qatar, which would help them in their other franchises that they've got. And they don't have to, none of this nonsense of, well, if we stick around for another 2 or 3 years, we might be worth 10 billion, which is, as everybody knows, just not going to happen. But even in their deluded minds, it's a huge risk to stay in the hope that that happens. Meanwhile, the club just continues to decay. So I think even for them, it's probably the best option. And I think that, please God, let it happen. I think that's the most likely eventuality. Number 4, a minority investor. I just can't see that happening. No minority investor worth their salt is going to give, lend, contribute to the Glazers, because there's a high chance they're not going to get anything in return for their investment. There's a high chance they'll never see any of it again. The Glazers are not trustworthy. They're terrible at what they do regarding United, and anyone that was going to invest in United is invested in the Glazers, unfortunately, and they would see it for what it is and run in the other direction. The other thing to consider for a minority investor is the toxicity that goes with getting into bed with the Glazers. Doesn't make any sense for me. Can't see it happening. And then finally, number 5 is the left field option, which is perhaps an as yet unknown bidder coming in and making a late play for it. I know that the Glazers have said that there's final bids have been and gone. I think that was in April, wasn't it? But if someone came in randomly and gave them loads of money, they would happily wait until the end of next season to see it through and get that money, if it took loads of time for it to be sorted out. I wonder if part of the reason they've kept the club on the market so long is to see if anyone else does come out of the woodwork. I can't see it happening. Again, why would you? United's a great club. We love it, obviously, as fans, but the only thing it's got going for it is the fan base and the history. There's nothing in terms of looking at the bare bones of it that's been left now. There's nothing that you look at and say, oh yeah, that's a good investment. It's a terrible investment, unless you're prepared to put some big dough into it, which obviously Sheikh Jassim would be, and maybe someone from Dubai or whoever, maybe they would be, but I think that's a bit of a left field option. When you lay it all out on the table like that, the option number 1 of the Glazers staying, it just doesn't seem feasible at all. This myth that they have all the power is just that, it's a myth. The stadium, I think, is close to having parts of it closed. There's parts of that stadium that are in a state of disrepair. Obviously, it must keep passing health and safety, because for a stadium that big, they must be doing health and safety checks. But there's areas that I've seen pictures of, and I hate to say it, I think it is literally a disaster waiting to happen. I think there's a stadium disaster waiting to happen there. The weather today, pissing it down with rain. Obviously, we're not there because there's no game on, but I bet it's absolutely raining in on the seats. That's never getting any better until it's properly sorted out. The club needs £2 billion spent on it at least. Now they might well stay and just think, well, we don't need to spend £2 billion, because they think that's not happening. So I know that it needs £2 billion spending on it. It doesn't mean they're going to stay and they're going to spend £2 billion. No, it doesn't. But they can't keep leaving that. That's just going to keep getting worse. We live in fucking Manchester. We're based in Manchester, where it rains pretty much all the time, as everyone tells us. So those things aren't going to get any better. They've run out of road. It's over for them. The decay of the club is complete as far as I'm concerned. Something really stuck with me. I saw an interview with that Sky Cava the other day, and something that he said really resonated with me. And he said they've heard from sources close to the takeover that the longer the Glazers demand more money, the more the thing they're trying to sell depreciates. That's it in a nutshell. I've been speaking for 9.5 minutes. That's probably it in a nutshell. That's probably all you need to know, really. It's done. They can't take dividends anymore. Obviously, 31% of United is owned by shareholders. By all accounts, the last couple of years when they haven't taken dividends, it's been because those shareholders have voted against it. It's not been that they've suddenly found some moral compass. They haven't. They would have carried on taking it all day long. But they've been voted against. You can't take it, and you can't keep taking dividends that aren't there. People that say they're going to keep milking the cash cow, nothing left to milk. So it's done, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I've said my preference is Sheikh Jassim. Absolutely it is. That being said, I could be proved wrong. He could come in, and Qataris come in, and they could be absolutely batshit crazy. We could have a forward line of like completely ill-fitting players. They could hire people to do jobs, and they do it worse than Ed Woodward did, if that's even possible. And I might, in a year's time, be sat there thinking, actually, it wasn't just the Glazers, it's just football in general. I'm going to do another video on United's players tomorrow. It's the players have fallen out in love with. It's football in general. It's modern day football. Stinks. Maybe it is. But I want the chance to experience that and find out for myself. Because right now the Glazers cloud everything, and it's very difficult to know if it's them and the fact that the players I can't identify with, or whether, and I think this is the problem, the players that are there because of them, and that's why I can't identify with them. Modern football's changed loads from when I loved it, organically loved it, and just threw myself into it and stuff. Yeah, it has. It's changed everywhere. But I look at Man City's players, I look at Liverpool's players, I look at Arsenal's players. I don't like them because of the teams they play for. We've got a lot more about them than our players have. And I'd like to see ownership that employs excellence rather than mediocrity. So let's hope that happens. Glazers out.